The metal chains around Amy Carter's wrists were cold against her skin. She sat on the dirty floor of the cargo hold, her back pressed against the wall of the alien ship. The ship hummed with strange sounds she had never heard before. It had been 3 weeks since they caught her on that distant planet, and every day felt like forever. Amy was a lieutenant in the Earth Defense Corps. She had been on a mission to scout the outer planets when everything went wrong. Her team was supposed to be quiet and careful, but the aliens found them anyway. She watched her friends die one by one. She was the only one they kept alive. The aliens were called Zephyrians. They looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. Their skin was green and covered in scales. They had long tails and sharp teeth. Their eyes were yellow and cold. Amy had seen many different aliens in her time as a soldier, but these ones scared her more than most. 2 Zephyrian guards stood near the door. They were talking in their own language. Amy had been listening to them talk for weeks now. At first, she could not understand anything they said, but she was smart and had a good memory. Slowly, she began to learn their words. The guards did not know she could understand them. They thought humans were stupid. Amy let them think that. It was better if they did not know what she could do. "The small human female looks weak," said the first guard. His name was Kartash. Amy had learned the names of all the guards by listening to them talk. "All humans are weak," said the second guard. His name was Veximer. "I have seen their diplomats. They are soft and afraid. This one will not last long in the arena." Amy kept her face blank. She had learned to hide her feelings. The guards could not know that she understood every word they said. "Captain Vextar says she will fight in the great arena on Zephyros," Kortash said. "The crowds will love watching her die. It has been too long since we had a human in the arena." "The betting pools are already open," Veximer laughed. "No one thinks she will survive even 1 minute against our champions. The odds are 1,000 to 1 against her." Amy listened to every word. She was learning about where they were taking her and what they planned to do. The great arena was some kind of fighting place. They wanted her to fight their champions. She would probably die, but maybe she could take some of them with her. The ship shook slightly as it changed course. Amy could feel the engines working. Harder. They must be getting close to their destination. Captain Vextar entered the cargo hold. He was bigger than the other Zephyrians. His scales were darker, and he had scars on his face and arms. He looked at Amy like she was a piece of meat. "So, this is the human warrior," he said in English. His voice was deep and rough. "You do not look like much. Are you sure you are a soldier?" Amy looked up at him but did not speak. She had decided weeks ago that she would not talk to these aliens unless she had to. "The silent type," Vextar said. "That is fine. You will have plenty of time to scream in the arena. Our champions will make sure of that." He walked closer to Amy. She could smell his breath. It smelled like rotting meat and old blood. "I have fought many humans in the past," Vextar said. "Your people are weak. You have no natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no armor. You are just soft pink meat. I do not understand how your species ever left your home planet." Amy kept her face empty of emotion. Inside, she was angry, but she did not let it show. Let him think she was weak and stupid. That would make things easier later. "The crowds on Zephyros will love you," Vextar continued. "They have not seen a human female in the arena for many years. The last one lasted almost 2 minutes against our weakest champion. Perhaps you will do better. Perhaps you will last 3 minutes." He laughed at his own joke. The guards laughed too. "Tell me, human," Vextar said, "what is your name? I like to know the names of those who will die for my entertainment." Amy looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke for the first time in days. "Amy Carter." "Lieutenant, Earth Defense Corps." "Amy Carter," Vextar repeated. "A simple name for a simple creature." Well, Amy Carter, you should pray to whatever gods your people worship. You will meet them soon enough. He turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at her. I almost forgot, he said. You should know that your friends died bravely, the ones we killed on that planet. They fought well, but they still died. You will join them soon. Amy felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept it hidden. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her upset. After Vextar left, the guards went back to their conversation. Amy closed her eyes and pretended to sleep, but she was really listening and thinking. She had been watching everything for 3 weeks. She knew how many guards there were. She knew when they changed shifts. She knew where they kept their weapons. She knew which parts of the ship were important and which were not. The guards thought she was just sitting there, feeling sorry for herself. They were wrong. Amy was a soldier. She had been trained to survive in impossible situations. She had been trained to find weaknesses in her enemies and use them. The Zephyrians had made several mistakes. First, they thought humans were weak just because they looked different. Second, they had kept her alive for 3 weeks instead of killing her right away. Third, they talked freely in front of her because they thought she could not understand. Amy had used those 3 weeks well. She had learned their language. She had studied their weapons and their technology. She had watched how they moved and how they fought. She had found their weak spots. The ship shook again, and Amy heard the engines changing pitch. They were slowing down. They must be arriving at their destination. Through a small window in the cargo hold, Amy could see stars. But now she could see something else too. A large planet covered in strange lights. It was green and blue, but not like Earth. The lights were too bright and too colorful. Zephyros, whispered one of the guards. Home at last. Amy looked at the planet that would probably be the place where she died. But she was not afraid. She was angry. These aliens had killed her friends. They had captured her and treated her like an animal. They wanted to make her fight for their entertainment. They thought she would be easy to kill. They thought she was just a weak human female. They were going to learn that they were very wrong. The ship began to shake as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Amy could feel the gravity changing. Soon they would land, and then they would take her to this great arena. Amy smiled for the first time in 3 weeks. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator who had found her prey. The Zephyrians wanted a show. Amy would give them one they would never forget. She would show them what a human could do when they had nothing left to lose. The ship touched down with a loud thud. Amy heard the engines shutting down. Soon the guards would come to take her to the arena. She was ready. The guards pulled Amy from the transport ship with rough hands. Her chains clanked as they dragged her across the landing platform. The air on Zephyros smelled different from Earth. It was thick and humid, with a strange sweet smell that made her nose wrinkle. Amy looked around as they walked. The city was unlike anything she had ever seen. Tall buildings made of crystal and metal reached toward the sky. Some of the buildings floated in the air with no support at all. Strange vehicles moved through the air between the floating structures. The sky was orange instead of blue, and there were 2 suns hanging overhead. Thousands of aliens filled the streets. Most were Zephyrians, but Amy saw other species too. There were tall blue beings with 4 arms. Small furry creatures that walked on 6 legs. Giant insects that clicked and buzzed as they moved. All of them stopped to stare at Amy as she passed. "Look at the human," one alien said in broken English. "So small and weak." "I heard they are bringing it to the great arena," said another. "It will not last long against our champions." Amy kept walking with her head up. She would not show fear to these creatures. The guards pushed her through the crowded streets toward a massive building in the center of the city. The great arena was enormous. It was round like the old Roman Colosseum on Earth, but much bigger. The walls were made of the same crystal material as the other buildings. They glowed with different colors that changed as Amy watched. The arena was so tall that its top disappeared into the orange clouds above. Impressive, is it not? Captain Vextar said as he walked beside her. The great arena has stood for over 1,000 years. Millions of warriors have died on its sands. Today, you will join them. They entered through a dark tunnel that led underground. The walls were covered with strange writing that Amy could not read. Pictures showed aliens fighting and dying in the arena above. Some of the pictures were very old. Others looked recent. Amy saw humans in some of the pictures. They were always shown losing, always shown dying. The Zephyrians wanted her to see these pictures. They wanted her to be afraid. The tunnel opened into a large room filled with cages. Each cage held a different type of alien warrior. Some were huge and covered in spikes. Others were small and quick. All of them looked dangerous. They all looked at Amy with hungry eyes. Fresh meat, growled one of the creatures. It looked like a giant wolf with too many teeth. Human female, hissed another. This one was covered in scales and had poison dripping from its claws. I have not tasted human in so long. Amy was put into an empty cage. The bars were made of the same crystal material as the buildings. They hummed with energy. Amy touched one of the bars lightly and felt a shock run through her finger. The cage was electrified. A new alien approached her cage. This one was different from the others. It was tall and thin, with long arms and legs. Its skin was pale green, and it had huge compound eyes like an insect. It wore robes that marked it as someone important. I am Clyctus, the alien said in perfect English. I am the arena master. I control everything that happens in the great arena above us. Amy looked at him, but did not speak. You are the human female they brought from the outer rim, Clyctus continued. I have been looking forward to meeting you. It has been 37 years since we had a human in the arena. The crowds are very excited. What do you want? Amy asked. I want to explain the rules, Clyctus said. It is traditional. All fighters must understand what they face before they enter the arena. He pressed a button on a device he carried. The air above them filled with moving pictures. Amy could see the arena from above. It was huge, easily big enough to hold a football field. The floor was covered in sand, but Amy could see that it could change. Parts of the floor moved up and down. Walls appeared and disappeared. Water flowed in from hidden sources. The arena is alive, Clyctus explained. It changes during the fight to create new challenges. Sometimes there are obstacles, sometimes there are traps. Sometimes there are weapons hidden in the sand. The pictures showed different fights. Amy watched aliens tear each other apart while crowds cheered. She saw warriors fall into hidden pits. She saw others burned by sudden jets of fire that shot from the walls. The rules are simple, Clyctus said. 2 fighters enter, only one leaves alive. You may use any weapon you find. You may use any part of the arena to your advantage. There is no time limit. The fight ends when one fighter dies or surrenders. What happens if I surrender? Amy asked. You become a slave, Clyctus said. You will spend the rest of your life serving whoever buys you. Most fighters choose death instead, Amy nodded. She had expected something like that. You will be given basic armor and one weapon of your choice, Clyctus continued. Your opponent will have the same. After that, survival depends on skill, luck, and the will to live. Who am I fighting? Amy asked. Clyctus smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Gorvik the Undefeated, he said, our greatest champion. He has fought in the arena for 15 years. He has never lost a single battle. He has killed over 200 opponents. More pictures appeared in the air. Amy saw a massive Zephyrian warrior. He was bigger than any of the others she had seen. His scales were black instead of green. His claws were longer and sharper. Scars covered his body, but they only made him look more dangerous. Gorvik has never fought a human before, Clectus said. He is curious about your species. He wants to see how long you will last. I have told him not to kill you too quickly. The crowds want a good show. Amy studied the pictures of Gorvak. He was fast for something so big. His reach was twice as long as hers. His natural armor looked thick enough to stop most weapons, but Amy was looking for weaknesses. Every fighter had them. She just had to find them. The fight will begin in 1 hour, Clectus said. You should use this time to pray or make peace with your gods. Very few beings survived their first fight with Gorvak. After Clectus left, Amy sat in her cage and thought. The other prisoners were still making noise, but she ignored them. She needed to focus. The arena could change during the fight. That was important. It meant the ground might not be stable. It meant there might be places to hide or things to use as weapons. The changing arena was supposed to make the fight harder, but maybe Amy could use it to her advantage. Gorvik was huge and strong, but that also made him slow. His claws were long, but that meant he had to get close to use them. His armor was thick, but armor always had weak spots. The joints, the neck, the eyes. Amy just had to find a way to reach them. A guard approached her cage carrying a tray of weapons. There were swords, axes, spears, and energy weapons. Amy looked at each one carefully. Choose your weapon, human, the guard said. Choose wisely, your life depends on it. Amy picked up a plasma rifle. It was similar to the weapons used by Earth forces, but heavier. She checked the power level and the targeting system. It would work, but she would need to be careful with her shots. Interesting choice, the guard said. Most fighters choose bladed weapons for close combat. The rifle will keep you at distance, but Gorvik is very fast. He will close the gap quickly. Amy also picked up basic armor. It was light and flexible, designed not to slow her down. It would not stop Gorvak's claws, but it might protect her from some damage. As she put on the armor, Amy could hear the crowds gathering above. The sound was like thunder. Thousands of voices all talking at once. They were excited about the fight. They wanted to see her die. Human, called one of the other prisoners. You seem calm for someone about to die. Are you not afraid? Amy looked at the creature. It was one of the wolf-like beings with too many teeth. Fear is just another emotion, Amy said. It does not help me survive. Spoken like a true warrior, the creature replied. Perhaps you will last longer than they think. I hope so. I have bet my freedom on you living past the first minute. Amy was surprised. You bet on me to win? Not to win, the creature laughed. Just to survive longer than 30 seconds. The odds were too good to pass up. 100 to 1 against you lasting even that long. Guards appeared at Amy's cage. They had come to take her to the arena. Amy took a deep breath and picked up her rifle. It was time to show these aliens what a human could do. As they led her through the tunnels toward the arena, Amy could hear the crowd getting louder. They were chanting something in the Zephyrian language. Amy understood the words now. Death to the human. Death to the human. Death to the human. Amy smiled grimly. They wanted death. She would give them death. Just not the death they expected. The tunnel opened into bright light. Amy stepped onto the sand of the great arena and felt 50,000 eyes watching her. The crowd noise hit her like a physical force. Aliens from dozens of different worlds filled the massive stadium. They were all screaming for her blood. The arena floor was bigger than Amy had expected. The sand was white and soft under her feet. She could see dark spots in the sand where fighters had died before her. The walls around the arena were smooth crystal that reflected the orange light from the twin suns above. Amy walked to the center of the arena, carrying her plasma rifle. Her armor felt light on her body. The rifle was heavier than she liked, but it would have to do. She had checked the power cell 3 times. It was fully charged and ready. Across the arena, another tunnel opened. The crowd noise changed from screams to cheers. They were welcoming their champion. Gorvak stepped into the sunlight, and Amy felt her heart skip a beat. The pictures had not shown how truly massive he was. He stood nearly 9 feet tall. His shoulders were as wide as Amy was tall. His black scales gleamed like armor in the light. His yellow eyes found Amy immediately and locked onto her. Gorvak carried a massive warhammer in one hand. The weapon was bigger than Amy's entire body. In his other hand, he held a shield made of the same crystal as the arena walls. His natural claws extended from his fingers like curved knives. The crowd chanted his name over and over. Gorvak! 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 They loved their champion. He raised his hammer above his head, and the crowd went wild. Galactus appeared on a floating platform above the arena. His voice echoed through speakers hidden in the walls. "Citizens of the galaxy," he announced. "Today we have a special treat. For the first time in 37 years, a human enters our arena. This small female thinks she can defeat our greatest champion." The crowd laughed and booed. Amy could hear them making bets on how quickly she would die. In the red corner, Galactus continued, weighing 600 pounds and standing 9 feet tall, with a record of 200 victories and 0 defeats, the destroyer of worlds, the crusher of bones, Gorvak the undefeated. The crowd exploded with cheers. Gorvak beat his chest with his free hand and roared. The sound was like thunder. In the blue corner, weighing 130 pounds and standing 5 feet 6 inches tall, with a record of 0 victories and 0 defeats, the human female, Amy Carter. The crowd booed and threw things at Amy. She did not move or react. She just stood there, looking small and afraid. "Let the battle begin." Galactus shouted. A horn sounded, and the fight started. Gorvak charged across the arena like a freight train. His hammer swung through the air where Amy had been standing a second before. But Amy was already moving, running to her left and firing her plasma rifle. The first shot hit Gorvak's shield and bounced off harmlessly. The second shot hit his shoulder but barely scratched his thick scales. The third shot missed completely. As Amy stumbled on the soft sand, Gorvak laughed as he chased her around the arena. "Is this the best your species can do? You run like a frightened child." Amy kept firing as she ran. Her shots were wild and desperate. Most of them missed. The few that hit Gorvak did no real damage. The crowd was laughing at her terrible aim. "She cannot even shoot straight," someone yelled from the stands. "This is pathetic," shouted another. "Kill her quickly and bring out a real fighter." Amy stumbled again and fell to one knee. Gorvak was getting closer. His hammer whistled through the air just inches from her head as she rolled away. Sand flew everywhere. The arena began to change around them. Walls rose from the floor, creating a maze of passages and dead ends. This was supposed to make the fight more interesting, but it also gave Amy places to hide. Amy ran into one of the passages, breathing hard. She could hear Gorvak smashing through the walls behind her, following her trail. He was not bothering to go around the obstacles. He was just destroying them. "You cannot hide from me, little human," Gorvak roared. "Come out and face your death." Like a warrior, Amy appeared at the end of a passage and fired 3 more shots. All of them hit Gorvak in the chest, but they barely left marks on his scales. Her rifle was making a high whining sound. The power cell was getting low. The crowd was getting bored. They had expected a quick kill, but the fight was dragging on. Amy was running and hiding instead of standing and fighting. "Some aliens in." The stand started to leave. "This is boring," someone shouted. "The human is just running away. Gorvak, finish her," yelled another. "We want to see blood," Gorvak seemed to agree. He stopped playing with Amy and started moving faster. He smashed through 3 walls in a row, getting closer to where Amy was hiding. His hammer crushed everything in his path. Amy fired 2 more shots, but now her aim was getting even worse. Her hands seemed to be shaking with fear. One shot went wide and hit the arena wall. The other hit the sand at Gorvak's feet. The power indicator on her rifle was flashing red. She was almost out of energy. Gorvak cornered her against one of the arena walls. There was nowhere left to run. Amy raised her rifle and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. The weapon was empty. "Finally," Gorvak laughed. "Now you must face me with honor." Amy looked at her empty rifle with panic in her eyes. She tried to eject the power cell to reload, but her hands were shaking so badly that she dropped it. The power cell fell into the sand and rolled away. The crowd sensed that the end was near. They started chanting again. "Kill, kill, kill." Amy tried to pick up the power cell, but it was too far away. Gorvak was walking toward her slowly now, enjoying the moment. He wanted to savor his victory. "Your species is weak," Gorvak said. "You have no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. You depend on your tools, and when they fail, you are nothing." Amy was backed against the wall with nowhere to go. Gorvak raised his hammer above his head, ready for the killing blow. The crowd held its breath. Then Amy did something that surprised everyone. She dropped her rifle and raised her hands above her head. "I surrender," she said in a voice that everyone could hear. The crowd erupted in celebration. They had been waiting for this moment. Gorvak had won again. The human female had given up without even fighting properly. "I knew it," someone shouted from the stands. "Humans have no courage." "She ran the whole time," yelled another. "What a coward." Even Gorvak seemed disappointed. "You surrender so easily?" "I expected more fight from an Earth warrior." Amy kept her hands raised and her head down. She looked defeated and ashamed. "Please," she said. "I do not want to die. I will be your slave. Just do not kill me." The crowd loved it. They were cheering and laughing at the pathetic human female who begged for her life. Bets were being paid all around the arena. Everyone had bet against Amy, lasting more than a few minutes. Gorvak lowered his hammer slightly. According to the rules, if Amy surrendered, she would become a slave instead of dying. Some fighters preferred that to death. "You disappoint me, human," Gorvak said. "I hoped you would show me something new. Instead, you are just another weak creature who gives up when things get hard." Amy kept her head down, but her eyes were watching everything. She was counting Gorvak's steps as he moved closer. She was measuring the distance between them. She was watching the position of his hammer and his shield. "Look at me when I speak to you," Gorvak commanded. Amy slowly raised her head. Her face was streaked with tears. She looked broken and defeated. The crowd laughed at her again. Gorvak was now standing directly in front of her, close enough to touch. His hammer was lowered. His guard was down. He thought the fight was over. "Pathetic," he said. "You humans are all the same. No honor, no courage, no will to fight." Amy nodded. Weakly, "You are right," she whispered. "We are weak." But as she spoke those words, her muscles were coiling like springs. Her weight was shifting to the balls of her feet. Her eyes were calculating angles and distances. The crowd could not see it, but Amy was getting ready to strike. Gorvak turned slightly to face the crowd, ready to claim his victory. That was the moment Amy had been waiting for. Her surrender had been a lie. Her fear had been an act. Her poor aim had been completely fake. For the past several minutes, Amy had been putting on a performance. She had been waiting for exactly this moment, when Gorvak would drop his guard and come within striking distance. Amy Carter was not a broken, defeated prisoner. She was a predator who had just finished setting her trap. Amy exploded into motion like a coiled spring being released. Her right hand shot out and grabbed the power cell she had dropped earlier, but she was not trying to reload her weapon. She was doing something much more dangerous. During her weeks of captivity, Amy had studied Zephyrian technology. She had watched the guards clean their weapons. She had seen how their power cells worked. Most importantly, she had learned how to remove the safety controls while pretending to fumble with the power cell. Amy had actually been stripping away the safety limiters. The power cell in her hand was now a bomb ready to explode. Gorvak saw her movement and started to turn back toward her. But he was too slow. Amy was already moving to her second target. Her left hand grabbed a sharp piece of crystal that had broken off the arena wall during the fight. While running around the arena, Amy had been memorizing every crack, every weak spot, every piece of debris she could use as a weapon. All of this happened in the first second. Gorvak began to raise his hammer, but Amy was already inside his reach. She drove the crystal shard upward with all her strength, aiming for the gap between his armor plates at his shoulder joint. The crystal pierced through his scales and into the muscle underneath. Gorvak roared in pain and surprise. Green blood flowed down his arm, but Amy was not done. As Gorvak staggered backward, she activated the overloaded power cell and threw it at his feet. The explosion was enormous. The power cell had contained enough energy to fire a plasma rifle 50 times. When all that energy was released at once, it created a blast that shook the entire arena. Gorvak was thrown backward by the explosion. His thick scales protected him from the worst of it, but the blast cracked his natural armor in several places. More importantly, it stunned him and made him lose his balance. The crowd had gone silent. They could not believe what they were seeing. The weak human female who had been running and crying moments before was now attacking their champion with deadly precision. Amy did not pause to admire her work. She was already moving to her next target. The explosion had created a crater in the arena floor. Sharp pieces of crystal and metal lay everywhere. Amy grabbed a long shard of metal that had been part of the arena's hidden machinery. Gorvak was trying to get back on his feet, but the explosion had damaged his inner ear. He was having trouble with his balance. Amy used this opportunity to strike again. She drove the metal shard toward the crack in his armor that the crystal had created, but Gorvak managed to block it with his shield. The metal scraped across the crystal surface with a horrible screeching sound. "Impossible," Gorvak snarled. "You were defeated. You surrendered." Amy smiled for the first time since entering the arena. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had cornered her prey. "I lied," she said simply. Gorvak swung his massive hammer at her, but Amy was no longer where he expected her to be. Her earlier running around the arena had not been panic. She had been mapping every inch of the fighting space, learning where every obstacle was located. Amy ducked under the hammer swing and rolled behind a piece of debris. The hammer smashed into the arena wall, sending more crystal fragments flying. Through the air, the arena's automated systems detected the damage and began to respond. Warning lights flashed. Security drones emerged from hidden panels in the walls. Energy barriers started to form around the damaged areas. This was supposed to contain the fight and prevent escapes, but Amy had been expecting this. She had studied the arena's defensive systems while sitting in her cage. As the first security drone flew toward her, Amy grabbed a handful of sand and threw it at the drone's sensors. The sand particles interfered with the drone's targeting system, causing it to fly in circles. The second drone was smarter. It tried to attack her from above, but Amy had picked up Gorvak's shield during the confusion. She used it to deflect the drone's energy blasts back at it. The reflected shots damaged the drone's power core, and it crashed into the arena wall. Gorvak was getting back to his feet, but he was moving more slowly now. The explosion had hurt him more than he wanted to admit. Blood was flowing from several wounds where his armor had cracked. You fight with tricks and deception, Gorvek said. This is not honorable combat. Honor does not win battles, Amy replied. Tactics do, she was right. Everything Amy had done so far was the result of careful planning. Her poor aim during the first part of the fight had actually been her targeting the arena's structural weak points. Her desperate running had been her positioning herself near useful debris and escape routes. Even her surrender had been perfectly timed. She had waited until Gorvek was close enough for her to strike, but far enough from his weapons that he could not counterattack immediately. More security drones appeared. The arena's computer system was trying to restore order, but Amy was ready for them too. She had noticed that the drones all emerged from the same type of panel. During her running around the arena, she had spotted the locations of every panel. Now she used that knowledge to her advantage. As 3 drones flew toward her, Amy threw pieces of debris at the panels they had come from. The debris jammed the panel doors, preventing more drones from emerging. Then she grabbed an energy weapon from one of the crashed drones and turned it on the remaining flying drones. Her aim was perfect now. No more shaking hands or wild shots. Each blast destroyed a drone with deadly precision. The crowd was no longer silent. They were screaming in panic and confusion. Some aliens were trying to leave the arena. Others were pressing forward to get a better view. No one had ever seen anything like this before. Gorvek charged at Amy again, but now she was ready for him. She had been studying his fighting style during their entire battle. She knew that he relied on his size and strength, but he was not very flexible or creative. Amy waited until the last second, then dropped to the ground and swept her leg at his ankles. Gorvek was too big and moving too fast to change direction. He tripped over her leg and crashed face first into the arena wall. The impact created a spider web of cracks in the crystal wall. Some of the cracks extended all the way to the arena's support structure. Amy had been hoping for this. She had been targeting the wall's weak points with her missed shots earlier. Now she grabbed another overloaded power cell from one of the destroyed drones. She had learned how to overload these devices by watching the first explosion. It was a technique that could be applied to any Zephyrian power source. Amy placed the overloaded power cell against the largest crack in the wall and took cover behind a piece of debris. The second explosion was even bigger than the first. The entire section of wall collapsed, creating a hole big enough to fly a small ship through. Alarms began blaring throughout the arena. Emergency lighting came on as the main power systems failed. The energy barriers that were supposed to contain the fight flickered and died. The arena's computer systems were going haywire. Gorvek was buried under a pile of crystal debris from the collapsed wall. He was still alive, but he was badly injured and trapped. His hammer lay broken in 2 pieces nearby. Amy walked over to where he lay pinned under the rubble. She picked up a sharp piece of crystal and held it to his throat. "Do you surrender?" she asked. Gorvek looked up at her with hatred and disbelief in his yellow eyes. "This is impossible. You are just a weak human female. You cannot defeat me." "I already have," Amy said. She was right. In less than 14 seconds, she had turned a hopeless situation into complete victory. The arena's greatest champion lay defeated at her feet. The arena itself was badly damaged. The security systems were offline, but Amy was not finished yet. She had bigger plans than just winning a single fight. She looked up at the panicking crowd and smiled. They had wanted to see her die for their entertainment. Instead, they had seen their champion defeated by the species they thought was weak and helpless. Amy picked up the energy weapon she had taken from the drone and pointed it at the arena's main support pillars. She had studied the arena's construction during her time in the cage. She knew exactly where to strike to bring down the entire structure. "Time to go home," she said. Amy aimed the energy weapon at the main support pillar and fired. The beam cut through the crystal like a hot knife through butter. The massive pillar began to crack and bend under the weight of the arena above. The crowd's panic turned to terror. As they realized what was happening, the entire arena was going to collapse. 50,000 aliens scrambled for the exits, pushing and fighting each other to escape. "She is destroying the arena," someone screamed. "The whole building is coming down," yelled another. Amy fired at a second support pillar, then a third. Each shot weakened the structure more. Pieces of crystal began falling from the ceiling high. Above, the arena floor shook like an earthquake was happening. Emergency sirens wailed throughout the building. Automated voice systems repeated warnings in dozens of alien languages. "Structural failure detected. Evacuate immediately." This is not a drill. Amy had studied the arena's construction during her weeks in captivity. She knew that destroying just 4 support pillars would cause a chain reaction. The entire floating platform would lose stability and crash to the ground. Security forces were finally responding to the crisis. Armed Zephyrian guards poured into the arena from all the tunnels. They carried heavy weapons and wore full combat armor. But they were too late and too confused to stop Amy. "There!" shouted a guard captain. "The human female. She's the one causing this." Amy was already moving before they could aim their weapons. She had memorized the layout of the entire arena complex. She knew exactly where she needed to go. The guard captain fired his plasma rifle at where Amy had been standing, but she was already gone. She had rolled behind a pile of debris and was crawling toward the nearest tunnel entrance. "Spread out," the captain ordered. "Find her before she brings down the whole building." But Amy was not trying to hide. She was heading for a specific location. During her time in the underground cages, she had noticed something important. The arena had its own small landing platform for VIP guests and emergency vehicles. Amy reached the tunnel and started running. Behind her, she could hear the guards shouting orders and the sound of the arena continuing to collapse. Her plan was working perfectly. The tunnel led to a service area beneath the arena. This was where the maintenance workers kept their equipment and where emergency vehicles were parked. Amy had seen this area through a small window in her cage. She burst through a doorway and found herself in a large garage. Several small aircraft were parked there. Most were maintenance vehicles, but one caught her attention immediately. It was a Zephyrian fighter craft. Small, fast, and armed with weapons. It was probably used to patrol the airspace around the arena during important events. The pilot had abandoned it when the alarms started. Amy ran to the fighter and climbed into the cockpit. The controls were similar to Earth aircraft, but with some important differences. Fortunately, Amy had been watching Zephyrian pilots during her captivity. She had learned how their flight systems worked. The engine started with a deep humming sound. Amy felt the fighter lift off the ground as the anti-gravity systems engaged. She had never flown a Zephyrian ship before, but the basic principles were the same as Earth fighters. The garage doors were closing automatically as part of the emergency lockdown. Amy fired the fighter's weapons at the doors, blasting them apart. Pieces of metal and crystal flew everywhere. As she piloted the ship through the opening, she emerged into the orange sky above the arena, just as the main structure began its final collapse. The floating platform tilted to one side as more support. Pillars failed. Thousands of aliens were still trying to escape as their greatest arena crumbled beneath them. Amy felt no sympathy for them. These creatures had killed her friends. They had captured her and planned to watch her die for entertainment. They deserved whatever happened to them. The fighter's communication system crackled to life. "Unknown aircraft. Identify yourself immediately. You are flying without authorization in restricted airspace." Amy ignored the radio calls and pushed the fighter to maximum speed. She needed to get away from the planet before the Zephyrian military could organize a proper response. Below her, the great arena finally collapsed completely. The massive structure crashed into the city streets, sending up clouds of dust and debris. The sound of the impact could be heard for miles. "Unknown aircraft, this is your final warning," the radio voice continued. "Land immediately, or we will shoot you down." Amy smiled and switched the radio to broadcast mode so everyone could hear her response. "This is Lieutenant Amy Carter of the Earth Defense Corps," she said. "I am returning to human space to report on Zephyrian war crimes. Any attempt to stop me will be considered an act of war against Earth." The radio went silent for a moment, then a different voice came on. It sounded like Captain Vextar. "Amy Carter," he said. "You have destroyed our most sacred arena and killed our greatest champion. You will pay for this crime." "Your champion is still alive," Amy replied. "I could have killed him but chose not to. That is the difference between humans and Zephyrians. We have mercy even for our enemies." "You will not escape this system," Vextar threatened. "We have warships surrounding the planet. They will destroy you before you reach the jump point." Amy checked her navigation display. The jump point where she could enter hyperspace was still an hour away at maximum speed. That was plenty of time for Zephyrian warships to intercept her. But Amy had one more surprise for her enemies. She activated the fighter's sensor array and began scanning for Zephyrian ships. There were 3 destroyers and a cruiser moving to intercept her. They were faster than her stolen fighter and heavily armed. Amy changed course toward the nearest moon. The moon was small and rocky with no atmosphere. More importantly, it had something Amy could use. The Zephyrian ships followed her, closing the distance rapidly. Soon they would be close enough to use their weapons. "Human," Captain Vextar's voice came over the radio again. "Surrender now, and we will make your death quick. Continue to resist, and we will torture you for years." Amy did not respond. She was too busy flying toward a specific location on the moon's surface. During her captivity, she had overheard the guards talking about military installations in this system. One of them was a weapons testing facility on this moon. The Zephyrian ships were almost in weapons range when Amy reached her target. She dove toward the moon's surface, flying so low that she almost crashed into the rocky terrain. Behind her, the Zephyrian ships followed. They thought she was trying to hide or find a place to land. They were wrong. Amy was heading for the weapons testing facility. More specifically, she was heading for the facility's main weapons storage bunker, the place where they kept experimental explosives for testing. She fired her fighter's weapons at the bunker entrance and flew past it at maximum speed. The shots penetrated the bunker's walls and hit the stored explosives inside. The explosion was visible from orbit. The entire side of the moon lit up like a small sun as hundreds of tons of experimental weapons detonated at once. The blast was so powerful that it sent shock waves through space. 2 of the Zephyrian destroyers were caught in the explosion and destroyed instantly. The 3rd destroyer and the cruiser were damaged but survived. Their crews were too stunned to continue the pursuit immediately. Amy used the confusion to escape. She flew away from the moon at maximum speed, heading for the system's jump point. The damaged Zephyrian ships tried to follow, but they were too slow and too badly hurt. As Amy reached the edge of the star system, she activated the fighter's hyperspace drive. The stars stretched into lines of light as she entered the tunnel between dimensions that would carry her back to human space. Before the hyperspace field fully engaged, Amy sent one final message to the Zephyrian fleet. "Tell your empire that humanity remembers its friends and never forgets its enemies. We are not the weak species you thought we were. If you want a war with Earth, you can have one. But remember what one human female did to your greatest arena and your greatest champion." Imagine what an entire human fleet could do. The message ended as Amy's ship disappeared into hyperspace. Captain Vextar sat in his command chair, staring at the empty space where the human ship had been. Around him, His bridge crew worked frantically to assess the damage to their ships and to the moon. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving emergency calls from the planet. The arena collapse has caused massive damage to the surrounding city. Thousands are injured. The death toll is still being counted." Vextar said nothing. He was thinking about what he had witnessed. One small human female had defeated their greatest champion, destroyed their most important cultural site, and escaped from their entire home fleet. "Captain," his tactical officer said, "should we report this incident to High Command?" Vextar considered the question. How could he explain that a single human prisoner had caused so much destruction? How could he tell his superiors that everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong? "Send a message to the High Council," he finally said. "Tell them we need to reassess our intelligence about the human species. Tell them that humans may be more dangerous than we believed." The officer nodded and began composing the message. But Vextar knew that words would not be enough. The Zephyrian Empire had made an enemy today,